Coast has returned. After our first look at Australia's epic coastline, it was clear we'd barely begun to cover this vast and surprising continent.
It's great to be back to explore 8 new fascinating coastlines.
From the Pilbara to the Torres Strait, from Norfolk Island to South Australia, we're setting out to capture the dazzling diversity of a young nation built on an ancient land, discovering the secrets, the scenery, and the stories of its people. Joining me on this grand adventure, Professor Tim Flannery, a passionate paleontologist and zoologist who also writes extensively about Australia's explorers. Distinguished marine biologist Professor Emma Johnston, a New South Wales Scientist of the Year. Emma is an expert on the stunning biodiversity in Australian waters. Dr. Xanthi Mallet is an anthropologist, scientist and keen diver with a fascination for social and cultural quirks. Brendan Moore is a landscape architect who is intrigued by the way people interact with their coastal environment. And Dr. Alice Garner is an historian who brings a special knowledge of coastal communities. And as for me, well, I get the job of a lifetime because I get to be your guide.
It's an irresistibly epic journey, and I can't wait to get started. Welcome back to Coast Australia.
Our first journey covers Victoria's dramatic Bass Strait coast. Taking in the sprawling Gippsland Lakes, the southernmost tip of the Australian mainland, and the jagged edge of the Mornington Peninsula. Tim delves into his own past in a tale of dinosaur discovery.
The first dinosaur fossil ever found in Australia.
Alice investigates a great maritime mystery.
This bay was the site of tragedy once again.
Brendan checks out a sport that's not plain sailing.
I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing.
While I'm on a journey into the unknown. More people have walked on the surface of the moon than have ever set foot on Skull Rock. But first, we're heading offshore, 50 kilometres east, off Victoria's Gippsland coast. For many years, the waters of Bass Strait hid a prehistoric secret, a buried treasure. In 1960, American geologist Louis G. Weeks singled out this area as a likely place to find black gold. The first big discovery was made in 1965 when an exploration company found natural gas. And just a year later, they discovered the real prize: oil. I've been given a very rare opportunity to fly the 43 kilometres out to see some of the platforms and to meet some of the people who live and work on them. Until 1966, Australia had been totally reliant on overseas oil. Now it had its own supply right here in Bass Strait.
The very existence of these platforms out here is testament to groundbreaking engineering. Invisible beneath us is a complex web of 400 wells, and a platform like that one doesn't just drill straight down. On the contrary, it can reach out in all directions, drawing upon reserves of oil and gas as far away as 6 kilometres.
Steve O'Brien is Senior Operations Supervisor on Tuna Platform. Bass Strait's been his workplace for over 40 years.
That's not a bad office, eh?
Steve, what kind of challenges does the Bass Strait pose for oil and gas exploration?
Well, probably the biggest challenge, Neil, is the weather. It's, it can be huge. You can go from what we've got out here right now, in 6 hours, we could be looking at 45, 50 knot winds and 3.5, 4 metre seas.
And how is the structure designed to cope with that?
Okay, in two ways. One, using piles, deep long piles, we actually pin the structure into the seabed. And then secondly, the structure itself, the 6,500 tonne of steel that it's made up of, is actually designed to withstand what we call the 100-year wave.
Which is what?
Which is statistically the biggest wave we're going to see over a 100-year period. And here, it's a 33-metre wave coming in from the southeast.
33, so how high are we above the sea at the moment?
Oh, plenty. We're about 50 metres above, so that's
right.
okay.
If the worst was to happen here and this thing was, washed away, what would it cost to put it back?
Oh, yeah. Little change out of 4.5 billion. So,
right, okay.
We don't want to have to rebuild this platform.
Okay, I hear you.
The figures are enough to leave you reeling, but there's another surprise waiting below, in the plant room.
So what is this? Where are we?
Have a look at this. Just have a feel.
Oh, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's hot to touch all.
That's the oil coming up from the reservoir. That's the temperature it comes up at. Just under 200 degrees as it comes to the surface. That's already cooled a bit.
Wow.
Bloody amazing, eh?
So the oil is hot because of its proximity to the centre of the Earth?
Yes. As the heat rises, as we go further towards the centre of the Earth, and as I say, we're only down a few thousand feet, but it's quite hot there already.
That is amazing.
So it's massive, eh?
It takes just 4 hours to draw the oil from its reservoir nearly 2 kilometres under the seabed. It's amazing to think that the black gold flowing through this pipe originated millions of years ago, as microscopic plants and animals in prehistoric seas, absorbing the sun's energy. As the microorganisms died, they sank to the ocean floor and were covered by layers of sediment. As millions of years passed, incredible pressure and heat transformed them. At between 60 and 120 degrees Celsius, they became crude oil. Higher temperatures turned them to gas. At any one time, Tuna Platform is home to up to 60 employees, from engineers to cooks, all doing their bit to make sure the precious oil and gas keep flowing 24 hours a day.
The oil workers aren't the only inhabitants of these platforms. These places are incredibly popular with the local seal population. So popular, in fact, that builders have to put in special gates to stop the seals climbing all the way up to where the workers are.
Since 1969, Bass Strait has produced over 8 trillion cubic metres of natural gas and 4 billion barrels of oil. A 600-kilometre network of pipelines transports the raw materials from the seabed to an onshore plant, where it's processed and sent off to power the country, providing 40% of Australia's east coast gas needs and 2/3 of the country's oil.
It's a funny feeling being out here on this platform. So I'm thinking all the time about how this one and others like it have been here in the Bass Strait for the best part of 50 years, pumping back gas and oil, upon which thousands upon thousands of people's lives have depended. And yet, although it's a gargantuan structure, and there are others like it, when you look at them in this seascape, they seem so insignificant, so slight and so frail. And you're reminded that for all we depend on this, and for how much human endeavour it represents, in the scheme of things, no matter what we do, we're still insignificant.
The next step in our journey takes us back onto terra firma. Southeast of Melbourne, near Cape Patterson and the very Scottish-sounding town of Inverloch, lies a distinctive outcrop called Eagle's Nest. From some angles, it resembles the top half of Australia, rising from the rock platform. More than a century ago, Eagle's Nest was the site of a landmark discovery. A discovery that changed both paleontology and Professor Tim Flannery forever.
They say that small events can cast long shadows. And one such event happened right here on this very rock platform in May 1903. The geologist William Ferguson was mapping the Victorian coastline, looking for coal. But what he found instead was this. He doesn't know what it is at first, but it's soon identified as the first dinosaur fossil ever found in Australia. Experts at the British Museum identified it as the toe bone of a carnivorous dinosaur. It was later dubbed the Cape Patterson claw. Ferguson's discovery was long dismissed as a fluke, partly because of the theory of continental drift. 110 million years ago, Australia lay 3,000 kilometres further south, huddled up against Antarctica. It was believed that cold-blooded reptiles couldn't survive in such harsh conditions. Imagine this land 110 million years ago. Back then it lay deep within the Antarctic Circle, and in the winter it must have been freezing. But during the summer, there was plenty of lush vegetation, and judging from the Cape Patterson claw, there were plenty of dinosaurs as well. The animal the claw came from was like an Allosaurus. It was a carnivorous dinosaur, significantly larger than me. After William Ferguson, it was 75 years before another dinosaur discovery was made. In 1978, a young university student and his colleagues had a hunch. They came back here in the footsteps of William Ferguson and began searching this rock platform. Pretty soon, they made not one new discovery, but 30 new dinosaur bones. And that student was me. But I can't take all the credit. It was my old friend and mentor, geologist Rob Glennie, who lit the fuse when he showed me William Ferguson's map. That's the map?
Yep.
That's the spot. See, when I saw that, it would have knocked me over with a feather. I didn't know, that it had been marked so precisely. There was, like almost an X marks the spot for the treasure, was where William Ferguson said, what is it? The tooth of a fish and some fragments and scraps of bones of reptiles. Found, it was like X marks the spot. I tell you, when you showed me that and brought me here, it really set me off on a different trajectory, different course. And we rediscovered the site after 75 years. Yeah, it's very, very kind of you. I took the fossils I'd found to paleontologist Tom Rich, senior curator at the Museum of Victoria. Tom, do you remember when I brought you those dinosaur bones first, 36 years ago?
Oh yes, I remember. You had a variety of them. You had carnivorous dinosaurs and you had herbivorous ones, and we gradually worked out what they were. But the most important thing about those 30 specimens you found was it showed us how to find them, because people have been walking over these rocks for 100 years, geologists, and never noticed them. Ferguson was a one-off.
Since our first discoveries proved the existence of southern polar dinosaurs, thousands of fossils belonging to at least 6 different dinosaur species have been found along this narrow stretch of coast. This band of volunteers, called the Dinosaur Dreaming Group, still makes discoveries on these platforms, including what looks to me like a vertebra. Well, that's amazing, because, here we are today, Tom, finding a bone not 50 metres from where William Ferguson found his claw, and the site's just still yielding fossils. There's a saying in paleontology that the hardest fossil to find is always the first one. Without William Ferguson's discovery, the world of Australia's polar dinosaurs might still be a mystery. But each year, more treasures are uncovered, and I can't help feeling that the next great discovery is just around the corner.
Port Phillip is one of the great bays of the world, and for over 150 years it has also been Australia's busiest port. From above, the entrance to Port Phillip seems inviting, but the Rip, as it's known, is one of Australia's most treacherous waterways. Riddled with underwater reefs, the Rip has claimed over 180 vessels and hundreds of lives. As historian Dr. Alice Garner discovers, one loss was so great, it stunned a nation.
This is Point Nepean. For many years, this whole area was a highly restricted military zone, and perhaps the world's most picturesque firing range. But half a century ago, one civilian was issued a special pass giving him free access to Point Nepean. That civilian was Harold Holt, who would later become Prime Minister. This peninsula and its rugged beaches were Holt's private playground. Even after becoming Prime Minister in January 1966, replacing the retiring Sir Robert Menzies, Holt took every opportunity to escape the tumult of Canberra. Here he entered the silent world of the ocean, snorkelling, spearfishing, and exploring the numerous wrecks strewn just off the coast. But that intense passion would cost the Prime Minister his life. One man who will never forget what happened here on Cheviot Beach on December 17th, 1967, is Alan Stewart. Good to meet you. Alan, how is it that you came to be on the beach the day that Mr. Holt disappeared?
I happened to be staying with neighbours of the Holt's Gillespie family, and after breakfast Mr. Holt came over and said he was going to Cheviot to have a swim, asked if we'd like to accompany him. So I ventured into the water up just up above my knees, and I felt this incredible undertow. And I thought, no, this isn't terribly smart, this is a bit dangerous, so I retreated back to the beach. And then the surf suddenly built up to a really crescendo, and it just was a white sort of cauldron of white foam. And that was the last I saw of it, and it was a very sad day.
Alan raised the alarm, sparking what was then the biggest search for an individual in Australian history. In the following days, divers battled the boiling surf. Here, a young Alan helps authorities, reenacting the events that led to the Prime Minister's disappearance. But their efforts were in vain. No trace of Harold Holt was ever found. And what is it like for you to come back to Cheviot Beach after all this time?
I suppose a bit spooky, but I don't sort of look at the beach and remember the tragic day. I come here and just admire this magnificent coastline and this particular beach here.
A glance through history tells us that leaders who die in office are usually the victim of an assassin's bullet or illness or old age. And I think it says something about Australia that we lost our Prime Minister not because of rebellion or conspiracy, but because of his love for the ocean.
From Cheviot Beach, we're heading east around the bottom of the Mornington Peninsula to Phillip Island. It's 10,000 hectares of flat, mostly empty countryside, yet 3.5 million people from all over the world flock here each year, making Phillip Island one of Australia's top tourist destinations. But it's not just the coastal good life that draws people here. It's also home to Australia's most iconic motor racing venue. Back in 1928, a race known as Australia's first Grand Prix was held here. And since then, many a racing legend has written their name into Phillip Island mythology. Today, Phillip Island is best known as a motorcycle mecca. Superbikes, MotoGP, the World 500cc Championship. But back in the early 1930s, things were very different. For a start, there was no track. Those early Grand Prix were held on public roads. Phillip Island fell from favour in 1935. The roar of horsepower not heard again until 1960, with the running of the first gruelling 500-mile enduro.
For the first 100 miles, cars can't stop to refuel or change drivers. Once the race has been underway for a while, there seem to be cars going in every direction. How do they work out how many times they've been around?
In the late 60s and early 70s, Phillip Island hosted numerous rounds of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Drivers like Peter Brock, Dick Johnson and Alan Moffat would go on to become household names, thanks in part to their deeds on this windswept island track. When Phillip Island isn't reverberating to the scream of fast cars and bikes, it's a tranquil place. Over the years, many people moved here to live a life of serenity, surrounded by the local wildlife. But for a few, their Shangri-La turned out to be a mirage. This spectacular and dramatic bit of coastline is within easy reach of Melbourne. perfect for a weekend getaway. It's surely valuable real estate, so you'd expect a holiday resort, some houses, even just some shacks. The fact is, there's nothing to see. But there used to be a town here. It was called Summerlands. Houses were spread along this roadside. But there's nothing there now but abandoned roads and signposts to nowhere. So what happened here? How come an entire town has vanished? Elizabeth Lundell Hegedus called Summerlands home for more than a quarter of a century. How are you?
Hello.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you used to live here?
Yes, just over there.
Right.
Just behind those great bushes over there.
Can you show me what your house used to look like?
Yes, I do have a photo in my pocket here.
So we're just in the back garden?
We're just behind the house there, yeah.
When Elizabeth first came here in the 1960s, Phillip Island real estate was booming. Land was cheap, views were spectacular. More than 180 houses sprouted, with a population of around 2,000 people. There was just one problem. This part of the island was already inhabited. Little penguins, or fairy penguins, are the smallest of the penguin species. For thousands of years, these guys have called Phillip Island home. And when the residents of Summerland's estate moved in, the penguins didn't move out. Tell me how you felt about the penguins, the notorious penguins.
Lovely. I loved having them around.
Why?
I'd missed them terribly.
Why did you love them?
Oh, just nice. They're pets that you don't have to worry about. They're just nice having them there.
The penguins made nests under verandas, in gardens, even under cars. They became squawking squatters. What is the noise that the
Look,
penguins
they
make?
have about 2 different calls, but the most common noise that they make is
That could get on a person's
yes,
nerves.
especially when it goes on all night.
Yeah. Despite the racket, for many years, people and penguins seemed to coexist. So why was everyone forced to leave? Well, it was the result of a patient crusade by just one man. Hi, Peter. Dr. Peter Dan is one of the world's foremost authorities on the little penguin. Back in 1980, he came to Phillip Island to study the local penguin population. How much trouble were the penguins in?
The penguins were in a great deal of trouble. I estimated that there would be none by 1997. So it was just the population was just in free fall. And most of the causes for that were things associated with the housing estate. So the penguins were being killed by people's dogs, particularly at night. Penguins were being run over by cars on the roads.
Was there a moment where you thought, there's nothing else for it, the penguins have to be left alone and the people will have to go?
Yes, and it came to a head, if you like, when we had an extreme event of vandalism where someone drove around and tried to run over as many penguins as they could, and they killed 54 penguins. And so we put them in a pile, the bodies of the penguins, and the media came, and that was a great moment for engaging the public concern about penguins and, you know, what we really wanted to happen here at this particular place.
In 1985, at Peter's urging, the Victorian state government made an extraordinary decision to buy back all the houses at Summerlands. Over the next 25 years, the town gradually disappeared. Every last building was either transported to the mainland or demolished. I have to say, it's an extreme solution that you came to.
That's right. I've heard of people having to move where they live for, dams or military purposes. But yeah, in this case, I think it's the only example in the world where a whole town has been moved for the sake of wildlife conservation.
And it's worked. Since Summerlands vanished, the number of breeding birds has trebled.
It's blue. It is.
I was expecting that black. Well, it doesn't approve.
No. Now this is a male, and it's just molted.
Okay.
Well, it's feathers, so it's got this beautiful blue plumage and white front.
And he's almost translucent. He's got that.
He is. Yes.
Gorgeous. Elizabeth's home was one of the last to go in 2010. How do you feel now when you stand here in this wild landscape? Does it you get a pang of regret?
Yes, I don't like coming here actually. It is a little bit upsetting because I love this part of the island and it's more or less off limits now. So yes, I am sad that we had to leave. The penguins were here first, thousands and thousands of years before we ever came, so it's fair, I think.
People may no longer live in Summerlands, but they still flock here every evening at sunset to watch what has become known as the Penguin Parade. After a hard day's fishing out at sea, they return onto the beach and waddle up through the dunes to their burrows on the peninsula. They're so nervous about leaving the safety of the dark water and making this run across the bright sand. So you can see they stay together in a group, and it looks as if they're all checking out the area to see if there's any predators, birds of prey, anything that might come and pick one of them off. But they're so smartly dressed. They look for all the world like it's like a wee gaggle of exhausted businessmen coming off the last train into the station after a stressful day. Obviously, you have to sympathise with people who were forced to move, who didn't want to go but who ended up having to. But watching these little guys make their way up the beach, I'm struck by one thing more than anything else, and it's that this will have played out for thousands upon thousands of years before there were ever any human beings here. And hopefully, with us finally out of the way, this will continue to play out for hundreds and thousands of years to come. Three hours southeast of Melbourne, Wilson's Promontory is the southernmost tip of the Australian mainland. It's not for nothing that this part of Victoria is called the Rocky Coast. The shore is peppered with dramatic boulders. The surface is worn smooth by eons of exposure. Just offshore from here, huge mounds of 380 million-year-old granite rise up out of the sea. The most tantalising of all of them is that one. Officially called Cleft Island, its local name, Skull Rock, only adds to its allure. It's just 5 kilometres off the coastline, and sometimes it seems close enough to touch, but in fact, it's virtually inaccessible. Many thousands of years ago, when the sea level was much lower, these islands formed a land bridge stretching from Victoria all the way to northeastern Tasmania. But for at least 18,000 years, Skull Rock and its fellow islands have sat in splendid isolation. Hi guys.
Hello Neil.
Looking forward to it.
How you doing? Patrick.
I'm joining 2 scientists from Melbourne Museum, Patrick Honan and Dr. Mark Norman, on the first scientific expedition to Skull Rock. Taking up nearly one whole side of the island, a massive cavern stares blankly, like an empty eye socket. Although Skull Rock is impressive from land, the way it looms on the horizon, it's only when you're out here that you get a real sense of its scale. Look into that gaping maw. You feel as if you could fit in there St Paul's Cathedral or the Sydney Opera House. This thing. That'll work. More people have walked on the surface of the moon than have ever set foot on Skull Rock, as far as we know. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for Coast Australia. For a non-scientist like me, can you explain why it's so special to arrive on a place like Skull Rock?
This place has got it all. Islands are little microcosms of evolution and isolation, so they're really special places anyway. Caves are amazing places for animals in the nooks and crannies. Put the two together, isolate it from the mainland for 18,000 years, and it's just, it's heaven. It's kind of Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs stuff.
The big question, is there life on this rock? And if so, what kind?
There's one down there. Oh, right, you got one. Yep.
Before long, we're closing in on one of the locals.
I've got him by the tail. Wow, well done.
A bona fide skull rock skink.
Look at that. That's the first time human eyes have gazed upon this creature for maybe tens of thousands of years. Think of that. Before there was any civilization or any empires or kingdoms. And there he is. He looks quite proud, actually.
He might even be one of a whole new species.
The way they court each other, the way they display to each other, the colour patterns they use, has that drifted away from what the rest of Australia's populations have been doing?
I'm wondering what other treasures might be waiting down below in that cave. There's only one way to find out. I hope this looks as intimidating to you as it looks to me. I hope you're getting the full effect. That's a sheer drop over that lip, straight down into the unforgiving waters of Bass Strait. Into the bushes. Oh yes, I see the nature of the problem. It's a vertical drop. The cave hasn't always been a feature of Skull Rock. It formed millions of years ago when the sea level was much higher. Waves hammered against weak parts of the granite face until they eventually gave way. Over millennia, the ocean gouged out this spectacular cavern. This might be, no, this is the most special place I've ever seen. This is a glimpse of how the world used to look. The cave's 130 metres wide and 60 metres deep. The roof, soaring 50 metres overhead, is like a stone wave, poised to break over us. At the rear, we make an unexpected discovery.
It looks like salt.
So how does that form here?
What's happened is the sea spray from huge seas over hundreds of thousands of years has dried in here, fallen to the ground, and it's never been washed away by the rain.
The salt has been here so long and is packed so hard, Patrick can't even take a core sample for study. So for now, whatever lies beneath must remain a mystery. But just a few metres away, lying out in the open, a truly remarkable find. It's iron. Iron.
That, I think, has been shot out of a gun.
You think that's an eroded cannonball, do you?
Well, I'm not sure where else pure iron would fit onto this, onto this rock if people can't climb here.
Wow. So it's some
Oh,
passing...
look, there's something in it.
Yeah, something green. That's copper alloy.
And that could be the outer casing. Some passing warship has been using the cave as a target.
Some very sensitive human being has decided to shoot into the eye of Skull Rock.
And is there any record of when, what century the ships are doing this?
It could be as early as mid-1800s.
Our brief visit's thrown up more questions than answers. But in a place so isolated, so remote and unexplored, we could only ever hope to scratch the surface. I'm sure my companions don't agree, but there's a wee part of me that hopes Skull Rock never surrenders all of its secrets. Humans have always felt compelled to risk the elements and run with the wind. At Waratah Bay, about 190 kilometres southeast of Melbourne, Brendan Moore has found some sea dogs who definitely have the wind in their sails, and they're not even on the water.
The idea of harnessing wind on land has been around for hundreds of years. Modern land yachting has largely been about achieving straight-line speeds on dry lake beds or coastal sands. But in 1999, the game totally changed with the invention of the blowcart. This new design greatly improved manoeuvrability, allowing tacking, veering and zigzagging at great speed. At first glance, there doesn't seem to be much to a blowcart. 3 wheels, a lightweight steel frame and a standard windsurfing sail. Put them together though, and the result is state-of-the-art land sailing. Developed in New Zealand, the blowcart's compact size and speed has hooked long-time sailors like Russell Whitehouse. So how did you get into this?
Well, I've been sailing all my life. I had 40 years of off-the-beach boats and lived in dinghies and catamarans, had a trailer sailor. Got rid of that and saw this at a show one day and I got in it and I was hooked.
The blowcart speed record is a sizzling 98 kilometres an hour. But even zipping along at half that speed gets the adrenaline pumping.
Always keep moving.
Before I strap in though, Club President Tim Vance runs me through what he calls a few simple instructions.
Sail on top. When you're going up, pulling up, you've got your sail on top, right? Going upwind, you pull the sail on. If you're going too fast and the wheel starts lifting, let go of the rope. Okay? Right. You got the gist of it?
You'll be right. Well, we'll find out, I guess. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. These guys seem confident. Wish I could chat up.
Righto, gentlemen and Brendan. Is everybody ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Now, going in a straight line is okay, but as soon as I try to tack... Luckily, the only thing bruised is my ego. I don't think the speed record's in any danger. But when the wind catches that sail, I can see why they're so excited.
300 kilometres east of Melbourne, beyond the deserted and seemingly endless sands of 90 Mile Beach, lie the Gippsland Lakes. Australia's largest system of inland waterways, this series of lakes, marshes and lagoons covers over 600 square kilometres. These waters have long been a haven for Melbourneites seeking an escape, but they're not the only ones drawn to this coastal paradise. Marine biologist Professor Emma Johnston is on the trail of a unique and previously unidentified species.
Finding a new species of large marine mammal is an extremely rare achievement. That's what happened here, in this well-populated area just a couple of years ago. I'm here to meet the scientist who made this discovery of a lifetime. In 2006, marine biologist Dr. Kate Charlton-Robb spotted something unusual in these waters, and like any good scientific sleuth, started investigating. It took 5 years of painstaking study, but in 2011, Kate's suspicions were finally confirmed.
So, Kate, what did you discover? Well, we had the amazing discovery of a brand new dolphin species.
Is that incredibly rare?
It is quite rare. It's only happened 3 times since the late 1800s that a new dolphin species has been formally described.
The new species' official title is Tursiops australis. Its common name is the Burranan dolphin, Burranan being a local Gippsland Aboriginal word meaning large fish of the porpoise kind. And its existence took Kate and the world of marine biology by surprise.
Basically, we've noticed by looking at the dolphin that they're a bit of a mishmash between the 2 other bottlenose dolphin species, so the common bottlenose dolphin and the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphin. So essentially what we were trying to do was just figure out which of the 2 these guys were.
But the dolphin's DNA didn't match either bottlenose species. So Kate investigated further and found other crucial differences inside the mammal's skull.
So this is the new species. What are the differences? So you can sort of see as a general thing that the common bottlenose dolphin is significantly larger than Australis, the new species here, but there are also really distinctive features that are quite different in terms of qualitative things. You have this quite pinched rostrum here, whereas this is quite flat.
That's a very big difference there.
It's
So that's quite pinched up the top. So you did a lot of very fine measurements on a lot of skulls.
Yeah, so we did quite a number of different measures, so tooth counts, the length of the orbits, a whole bunch of different measures. I'm desperate to see Kate's dolphin, but finding them in 600 square kilometres of lakes is not easy. And there's another reason they're difficult to spot. The Burranan dolphin population is tiny. Just 50 live here in the Gippsland Lakes, 100 live in nearby Port Phillip Bay, and a small number call the waters off Tasmania home. But today, our persistence pays off.
Yeah, yes, I can see it.
I get my first glimpse of a whole new species.
So there we go, we found them here, they're all around. There's some coming over here. Oh, there's a calf over there. It's just wonderful. 4 tightly grouped over here, another few here, some on the bow. There we go. There, oh, look. Coming across to the bow. So beautiful.
The perilously small numbers mean the new species is already under threat. But Kate hopes her ongoing research will help bring her dolphin back from the brink.
From a newly discovered species to something altogether more retro. The final chapter in our East Victorian journey begins at a place called Taiab on the Mornington Peninsula, with a woman who knows this coastline better than anyone, at least from the air.
Not everyone on this spectacular stretch of coastline is interested in boats. For some, the passion is all about another kind of craft. Look at this. You might think it's a museum, but it's not. These things are very much alive. It's like a collection of wonderful toys. They're so glamorous. But in fact, these are predators. These are fighter aircraft, or as they're called in the aviation world, warbirds.
Not only is their plumage spectacular, each one of these magnificent birds is airworthy, ready to take to the sky at a moment's notice. And they all belong to one remarkable woman, aviatrix and avid collector, Judy Pay.
Hi, Judy. How are you doing?
Hello, Neil. Welcome to Taiab.
Thank you. Do you fly these?
Yes, all of these. This is one of my favourites. It's a 1940s old biplane, English biplane with no brakes, no steering. It's just really wind in the wires,
So
stick and rudder.
Stick and rudder stuff.
Yeah.
What is it called? What kind of
This
aircraft?
is a Tiger Moth, a de Havilland Tiger Moth.
The Tiger Moth was Judy's first classic craft. Now she owns 7 warbirds.
Now, Judy might not like to admit it, but there are others here who say that this could be the pride of the fleet. This is a single-engine, single-seater P-40 Curtiss Warhawk, or Kitty Hawk, if you come from my part of the world. She looks better than new, but it took a lot of love and care by Judy and the rest of the team to bring this baby back to life.
The Kitty Hawk crashed on an island in Vanuatu during World War II, where it lay forgotten for nearly 50 years. Until Judy got wind of it, that is.
What condition was this Kitty Hawk in when you first encountered her?
First encountered her on the island in Vanuatu, crashed pretty much on a hillside. But fortunately, a French farmer was on his land, and he'd put it onto some drums and sprayed it with diesel, which actually preserved it quite amazingly. So what little was there was in reasonably good condition.
Judy salvaged the wreck, and for the next 20 years, she and her team worked to restore this warbird to its former glory.
This is a one-of-a-kind.
Yes, this is the only genuine flying F-model Kitty Hawk in the world at the moment, yeah. It's very, very rare and very beautiful.
Now, you know how these stories go. Wouldn't be complete without me going up in one of these wonderful toys. Well, this is it. It's a North American T6 Texan, also known as a Harvard.
During World War II, these were like flying classrooms. Hundreds of thousands of Allied pilots learned to fly in aircraft just like this one. What a way to see this magnificent Victorian coastline one last time. I'm betting those pilots training during the war never had a view like this.
It is a bit special being over the water, isn't it?
It's just beautiful here. It's a lovely place to fly.
This coastline has been through many changes and has revealed many treasures. And just as the aircraft that Judy maintains are the product of slow, painstaking, constant work, so the wind and the waves and the weather here are always working gradually to renew and to reshape this landscape. And of course, the people who cling to its edge.
Next time, we're off to South Australia's limestone coast. Emma dives deep into ancient caves.
So we just swam through a 5 million year old Gothic cathedral.
Tim has a close encounter.
For the Europeans of 200 years ago, this coastline here was about as unknown as the dark side of the moon.
Alice gets a taste of the gold rush,
This is California all over again.
while I take to the air to search and destroy. Can we go and attack a submarine now?